I should have heeded Jessica's warning about the ominous sky. But, typical of me, I brushed it aside. That's how I found myself neck-deep in the Atlantic at 5 in the evening. A maelstrom of storm clouds bearing down like a clenched fist over the horizon. Just one more swim, Liv, Lauren had insisted, her sun-streaked hair lashing across her face in the rising wind. Come on. We drove all this way. Who knows when we'll get another weekday off together. She had a point, I conceded. The three of them, Jessica, Hannah, and Lauren, were the only constants in my otherwise chaotic existence as a freelance architect. Between my impossible deadlines and their equally demanding schedules, snagging an afternoon at this secluded beach felt like nothing short of a miracle. The water was surprisingly warm for late September. I pushed off from the shore, surrendering to the hypnotic rhythm of the waves lifting and dropping me, a sensation I'd cherished since childhood. Hannah, ever the cautious one, stayed close to the shallows. Jessica floated serenely on her back nearby, her eyes shielded against the fading light. I ventured further out, relishing the stretch in my shoulders, the sting of salt on my skin. Freedom, I mused, tasted like seawater and smelled like the approaching rain. Out here, I wasn't Olivia Carter, daughter of a man whose very name made people instinctively lower their voices. I was just a woman in the ocean, anonymous, unburdened. That's when I spotted it. A bright yellow buoy, adrift and tumbling across the surface like an oversized beach ball. Acting on some foolish impulse to retrieve what was lost, to fix what was broken, I struck out toward it. But before I could reach it, the current seized me. One moment I was swimming along as usual. The next, invisible hands yanked me sideways and down. I kicked frantically, desperate to break free, but the water had other plans. My head plunged under surface briefly, then plunged under again. The acrid taste of salt burned my throat as I gasped and choked, trying to draw breath. Panic, I realized, tasted like copper and felt like ice coursing through my veins. I heard screaming, distant and muffled. Was it mine? Theirs? The sky above me whirled, gray and indifferent. Water flooded my mouth, my nose, my lungs, protesting the invasion. I clawed frantically toward the surface, but couldn't tell which way was up anymore. Everything was cold and dark, and my chest was on fire. My last coherent thought was pathetically mundane. I hadn't finished that damn library renovation proposal that was due on Friday. Then, nothing. The restaurant had been a complete waste of time. Giovanni Brunarelli glanced at his watch as he rose from the corner booth, his patience with incompetent informants now officially exhausted. 2 hours he'd waited for a man who apparently valued his kneecaps less than punctuality. "Let's go," he said to Marco and Tony, the two guards who flanked him like well-dressed shadows. They moved as a unit through the nearly empty dining room toward the exit. The restaurant was perched on a bluff overlooking the ocean, one of those places that charged exorbitant prices for mediocre seafood and spectacular views. Giovanni owned a third of it, though most of the patrons were none the wiser. He preferred it that way. They had just reached the parking lot when he heard it. A sound that sliced through the rising wind and the distant rumble of thunder screaming, high-pitched and desperate. Giovanni's hand shot up automatically, stopping Marco before he could open the car door. "Wait, listen." There it was again. Multiple voices now, shrieking words he couldn't quite decipher, but understood viscerally. Someone was in trouble. He moved to the edge of the parking lot, where it overlooked the beach below. Through the curtain of rain that had just begun to fall, he saw them. 3 women in the shallows, pointing frantically at something further out. No, someone. A dark shape bobbing limply in the waves. Drowning. Giovanni was running before his brain had even caught up. Down the wooden stairs that connected the parking lot to the beach, taking them 3 at a time. His dress shoes hit the sand, and he kicked them off without breaking stride. His jacket followed, dropped carelessly as he sprinted toward the water. The shirt would be ruined. The pants, too. He didn't care. He dove in. The ocean was much rougher than it had looked from shore, waves slapping his face as he swam hard toward the floating figure. The rain pelted the surface, making visibility even worse. He used the screaming women as his compass, adjusting his course based on where they were pointing. There, 20 feet ahead, a woman face down, her hair spreading around her head like dark seaweed. Giovanni reached her in 6 powerful strokes, grabbed her under the arms, and flipped her face up. Young, maybe late 20s, lips already turning blue. He kicked toward shore, employing a lifeguard carry he'd learned decades ago in another life, when he'd been someone else, someone who'd had the luxury of normal summers and swim lessons. The 3 women splashed toward him as he dragged the unconscious body into the shallows. He laid her on the sand, rain pouring down on both of them, and checked her airway. Nothing. No breath, no cough, no movement. Giovanni tilted her head back, pinched her nose, and pressed his mouth to hers. 2 breaths. Check for response. Nothing. 2 more breaths. Chest compressions. His hands positioned precisely over her sternum, elbows locked, pushing hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another breath. He tasted salt and death and something else, something that made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. She convulsed under his hands, turning her head to vomit seawater onto the sand. Giovanni rolled her to her side, supporting her as she coughed violently, her entire body shaking with the effort of expelling the ocean from her lungs. When she finally stopped retching and opened her eyes, Giovanni forgot to breathe. Green. Not the muddy hazel that passed for green on most people, but true emerald, bright and clear, even in the dim, stormy light. Distinctive, unmistakable. He knew those eyes. He'd seen them in surveillance photos, in files, in the face of the man he'd spent 15 years opposing across negotiation tables and territory lines. Robert Carter's daughter. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd just saved the life of his greatest enemy's only child. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw from seawater and coughing. "Thank you." The 3 other women arrived in a flurry of towels and sobs and frantic questions. They wrapped her up like a child, checking her over with trembling hands. "Oh my God, Olivia, we thought you were dead. I couldn't reach you. The current was too strong. You're okay. You're okay. Breathe. Just breathe." Olivia, even her name carried weight. Giovanni stood, water streaming from his ruined clothes. He should leave now, before they asked questions he couldn't answer without lying or revealing too much. "Wait!" One of them, a redhead with tears streaming down her face, grabbed his arm. "Please, what's your name? We need to thank you properly. Can I get your number?" "Giovanni," he said, keeping his voice neutral. Just his first name. Nothing more. "Giovanni? What?" "Just Giovanni." He managed what he hoped looked like a humble smile. It was instinct. Anyone would have done the same. No thanks necessary. The blonde, the one who'd initially called out to him, wasn't buying it. "You saved her life. Please let us at least—" "I'm just glad she's all right," Giovanni interrupted gently but firmly. "But I really need to go. Make sure she gets warm and sees a doctor." He turned and walked away before they could protest further, ignoring the squish of seawater in his socks, the cling of his white shirt to his torso, the cold that was finally starting to register. Marco and Tony waited by the car, both looking somewhere between confused and alarmed. "Boss, you're soaked," Marco said unnecessarily. "Drive." They didn't argue. Giovanni slid into the back seat, not caring about ruining the leather. The car pulled smoothly out of the parking lot, wipers beating against the downpour. "That was Robert Carter's daughter," Tony said quietly from the passenger seat. So they'd recognized her, too. Of course they had. Good men, his guards, observant, loyal. "I know," Giovanni replied. "You saved her." "I know." "Why?" That was the question, wasn't it? Giovanni touched his lips, still tasting salt and seawater. And that indefinable something that had passed between them in that moment, when she'd opened those impossible green eyes. He should have let her drown. Should have turned around, driven away. Let the ocean solve a problem that had plagued his family for over a decade. One less Carter in the world would have made everything simpler. But he hadn't, couldn't. Even knowing who she was, whose blood ran in her veins, whose legacy she carried, he'd run into that water without hesitation. "I don't know," Giovanni finally answered, watching the ocean disappear in the rearview mirror. It was the first lie he'd told his men in 5 years. He knew exactly why he'd saved her. The problem was, the reason terrified him more than any enemy ever had. 2 days after nearly drowning, I was back at my drafting table like nothing had happened. Because that's what you did when you were a freelance architect with bills due and no safety net. You swallowed the trauma, ignored the nightmares about cold water filling your lungs, and finished the damn library renovation proposal. My apartment smelled like coffee and the lavender candle Hannah had dropped off yesterday, along with enough baked goods to feed a small army. She'd hovered in my doorway for 20 minutes, asking if I was really okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted her to stay. I'd sent her home. I needed space to think. The man who'd saved me haunted my thoughts in ways I couldn't explain. Dark eyes, strong hands, the taste of his breath in my mouth as he'd forced air back into my lungs. Giovanni. Just Giovanni. Nothing more. Like he was hiding something, or maybe everything. My phone buzzed. Jessica's name lit up the screen. "Hey," I answered, not looking up from the elevation drawing spread across my desk. "You sound distracted. Are you working? You should be resting." "I'm fine, Jess. Really." Liar. There was affection in her accusation. "By the way, your mysterious hero." I tried looking him up. My pencil paused mid-stroke. "And?" "Nothing." I searched for Giovanni in every database I could access at the hospital. No matches for anyone who fits that description in the Boston area. It's like he's a ghost. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the October breeze coming through my cracked window. Maybe he gave a fake name. Maybe. Or maybe he's just really private. Jessica sighed. "I wish we'd gotten his number. I wanted to send flowers or something." "He didn't want thanks. He made that pretty clear." Still weird, though, right? Save someone's life and then disappear into the rain like Batman. I laughed despite myself. Batman probably has better things to do than fish architects out of the ocean. We talked for a few more minutes before she had to get back to her shift. The moment I hung up, the phone rang again. Hannah this time, her worry even more pronounced than Jessica's. I reassured her with the same practiced phrases. Yes, I was eating. No, I wasn't having panic attacks. Yes, I'd see a therapist if the nightmares got worse. All lies felt necessary when the truth was too complicated to explain. I managed another hour of productive work before my father's call shattered my focus. "Olivia." His voice carried that particular edge that meant disobedience wouldn't be tolerated. "Dinner tonight, 7 o'clock. I'm busy. Cancel it." "Dad, I have a deadline." 7 o'clock, Olivia. "Don't make me send someone to collect you." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, fury and old fear warring in my chest. Robert Carter didn't make requests. He issued commands and expected immediate compliance. It was one of the many reasons I'd walked away from him 6 years ago. But ignoring a summons would only make things worse. He'd proven that before. The mansion looked exactly as I remembered it. Graystone, manicured lawns, security cameras disguised as decorative fixtures. Money and power wrapped in tasteful New England architecture. I'd grown up here, played in these rooms, and hadn't felt safe in a single one of them since the day I'd overheard my father ordering someone's execution in his study. I was 21, home from college for winter break. The conversation had been casual, discussing murder like it was a business merger. I'd left that night and never really came back. A man I didn't recognize opened the door. Young, broad-shouldered, with eyes that cataloged everything. New security. My father cycled through guards like most people change socks. Hard to maintain loyalty when your employer might kill you for looking at him wrong. "Miss Carter, your father is waiting in the dining room." I followed him through halls lined with art my father probably didn't even look at anymore, investments, not decorations. Everything in Robert Carter's world served a purpose. He sat at the head of a table that could seat 20, though only 2 places were set. Him at the throne, me relegated to his right hand, close enough to control, far enough to keep at a distance. "Olivia." He didn't stand. Didn't smile. You look well for someone who nearly died 2 days ago. I sat without invitation. Your information network is as invasive as ever. It's called being thorough, something you might practice. He poured himself wine from a bottle that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Swimming in a storm. Childish and reckless. I'm 27 years old. I don't need a lecture on risk assessment. Apparently you do, since you nearly drowned. His gray eyes, so unlike my green ones, fixed on me with clinical assessment. You're lucky someone was there to pull you out. Something in his tone made me wary. It was an accident. I got caught in a current. And yet you were rescued by a good Samaritan who vanished before anyone could properly identify him. He sipped his wine. Interesting, don't you think? What do you want, Dad? The food arrived, delivered by silent staff who knew better than to linger. Steak, roasted vegetables, potatoes that gleamed with butter. I wasn't hungry, but I picked up my fork anyway. Refusing to eat would give him ammunition. The Brunarelli family has been expanding operations at the northern port, he said, cutting into his steak with precise movements. My sources say they're planning to move into territories that have been O'Sullivan-controlled for 15 years. And that concerns me how? It concerns you because you're my daughter, my only child, the heir to everything I've built. I don't want anything you've built. That's irrelevant. He set down his knife. I've arranged a marriage. Liam O'Connor, son of my oldest ally. The union would strengthen our position considerably. The fork clattered against my plate. Excuse me? You heard me. I'm not getting married to consolidate your criminal empire. You tried once before. Or did you forget? The wound was old, but still tender. At 21, fresh with horror at discovering my father's true nature, he tried to marry me off to a lieutenant in his organization. A man twice my age who looked at me like property. I'd run instead, built a life from nothing. Swore I'd never let him control me again. That was 6 years ago. I'm not that scared girl anymore. No, he agreed. You're a woman living in a mediocre apartment, working freelance jobs that barely pay your bills, pretending you're independent while I allow you the illusion of freedom. The words stung because they carried truth. I wasn't rich. I wasn't particularly successful, but I was free of him, and that mattered more than money. I'm not marrying Liam O'Connor or anyone else you choose. Robert leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a problem requiring a solution. You think you have a choice? That's charming. I do have a choice. I'm leaving now. Before you go... His voice stopped me halfway out of my chair. You should know that all my business records are kept in the safe in my study. Financial transactions, territory agreements, names of everyone on my payroll. Everything that keeps this organization running smoothly. I mention this only because you seem to think you understand how vulnerable you really are. It was a threat and a revelation wrapped in casual conversation. He was showing me his power, reminding me that I existed in his world, whether I wanted to or not. But he'd also just told me where he kept his greatest weakness. I left without another word, my mind already racing. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and anger, and the beginnings of a plan I wasn't quite ready to fully form. That's when I noticed the SUV black, expensive, tinted windows parked across from my building in a space that had been empty when I left. Could have been nothing. Probably was nothing. Except it followed me into the parking garage. I grabbed my pepper spray from my purse, heart hammering as I parked and exited my car. The SUV pulled into a spot 3 spaces away but didn't cut its engine. Didn't open its doors, just waited. I walked quickly toward the elevator, keys clutched between my fingers like makeshift weapons. Every self-defense class I'd ever taken played through my head. Scream loud. Go for the eyes. Run if you can. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and jabbed the button for my floor. As the doors began to close, I caught a glimpse of the SUV's driver. Dark hair, strong jaw. Even through the tinted glass and distance, I recognized him. Giovanni. The elevator carried me up, but my thoughts stayed in that parking garage. He'd found me, followed me, was sitting outside my building like he had every right to be there. I should have been terrified, Should have called the police immediately. Instead, I stood at my window after locking every door, looking down at the street where his SUV remained parked like a sentinel, watching, waiting, protecting, or threatening. Couldn't tell which. Maybe both. Lauren insisted on coming with me to the gallery opening, something about not letting me out of her sight after the drowning incident, as if I might spontaneously decide to throw myself into another body of water. "You look nice," she said as we climbed out of her car. "That dress is gorgeous on you." The wine-colored fabric hit just above my knees. Professional but not stuffy. I'd spent 20 minutes debating whether it was appropriate for a networking event focused on historical preservation projects. In the end, I'd decided confidence mattered more than convention. "Thanks. I'm hoping to connect with some potential clients tonight. The museum commission is looking for architects to bid on their expansion project." "Always working." Lauren linked her arm through mine as we approached the entrance. "Would it kill you to just enjoy something without turning it into a business opportunity?" says the woman who turned her hobby blog into a six-figure marketing consultancy. Touché. The Meridian Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and industrial lighting, softened by carefully curated paintings. Classical music drifted through the space, barely audible above the murmur of conversation. People clustered in small groups, wine glasses catching the light like jewels. I recognized a few faces from previous events: the Preservation Society president, a developer who specialized in adaptive reuse projects, several architects whose work I admired from a respectful distance. This was my world, or at least the world I was trying to build for myself. Clean money, honest work, nothing that required looking over my shoulder. "There's the catering table," Lauren said. "I'm getting wine. Want some?" "Just water for now. I need to keep a clear head." She disappeared into the crowd, leaving me to study the nearest painting. Abstract, lots of blues and grays, probably meant to evoke something profound about the human condition. Mostly, it reminded me of the ocean, which reminded me of drowning, which I was definitely not thinking about tonight. "Interesting piece, isn't it?" The voice came from behind me, low and familiar. I turned, and there he was, Giovanni. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. White shirt open at the collar, no tie. His dark hair was combed back from his face, revealing the strong bones I remembered from the beach. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Deep brown, almost black, watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You," I managed. "Me." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "I was hoping you'd be here. How did you?" "The Meridian Gallery is one of my investments. I review the guest lists for events." He moved to stand beside me, close enough that I caught his scent. Something expensive and masculine cedar, maybe with an undertone of smoke. "I'm glad to see you recovered from your ordeal." My brain was trying to process too many things at once. He'd known I would be here, had arranged to be here himself, was standing so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I never got to thank you properly," I said, finding my voice, "for saving my life. You thanked me on the beach while coughing up seawater. Hardly adequate." He smiled fully now, transforming his face from intimidating to devastating. "What did you have in mind?" "Dinner. My treat. It's the least I can do." "Dinner." He repeated the word like he was tasting it. "I accept, but with conditions. You choose the restaurant, I choose when. That seems fair. And you let me ask you questions about your work. I'm fascinated by architecture, the way buildings shape how people live, how they move through space. This I could handle. Architecture was safe ground, familiar territory. What specifically interests you?" "Adaptive reuse. Taking something old, something that served its purpose, and reimagining it for something new. Finding beauty in what others might consider broken." The way he said it made me think he wasn't just talking about buildings. There was subtext I couldn't quite grasp, layers beneath the surface conversation. We talked for 20 minutes. He asked intelligent questions about load-bearing walls and historical preservation standards. I found myself explaining concepts I usually reserved for clients, surprised by how much he understood. He mentioned owning several properties in the city, mostly commercial, all requiring someone who respected their history while making them functional for modern use. "You should give me your card," he said. "I might have projects that would interest you." I was reaching into my purse when Lauren appeared, 2 wine glasses in hand and suspicion written across her face. "Olivia, I've been looking for you." "Lauren, this is Giovanni." "Giovanni, my friend Lauren." "Pleasure." Giovanni nodded politely but made no move to shake hands. Smart. Given that Lauren looked like she wanted to throw her wine at him. "We should go look at the sculpture exhibit," Lauren said pointedly. "It's why we—" "Sure. Here is the rewritten content." Of course. I fished out my business card and handed it to Giovanni. "In case you want to discuss those projects," he said, producing his own card from an inner pocket. "Heavy stock, simple design, just a name and phone number. Giovanni Brunarelli. Call me when you've chosen the restaurant," he said. "I'll be in touch about timing." I took the card, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Electricity shot up my arm. Unexpected and unnerving. His eyes held mine for a beat too long before he stepped back. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." He walked away, and I noticed how the crowd seemed to part for him without conscious thought. People moved aside, nodded respectfully, watched him pass with a mixture of admiration and weariness. Lauren grabbed my elbow the moment he was out of earshot. "What the hell was that?" "What was what?" "Olivia, that man is dangerous." I could feel it from across the room. The way people look at him. "He saved my life. And now he's stalking you at art galleries." "He owns part of the gallery," I said. "So convenient." Lauren steered me toward a quieter corner. "I'm serious. Something about him screams trouble. You need to be careful." "I'm always careful." "No, you're always stubborn. There's a difference." We left shortly after, Lauren's concern casting a shadow over what should have been a successful evening. I'd made several good contacts, got 3 potential client leads, and reconnected with my mysterious rescuer who now had a last name. Back in my apartment, I fired up my laptop before even changing out of the dress. Typed Giovanni Brunarelli Boston into the search bar. The results loaded and my stomach dropped. Giovanni Brunarelli, 35, suspected head of the Brunelli crime family. Ties to illegal importation, money laundering, suspected involvement in territorial disputes with rival organizations. Photos from charity events, always in expensive suits, always surrounded by men who were clearly security. An article from 3 years ago about a federal investigation that had gone nowhere due to lack of evidence. Brunarelli, the name my father spat like a curse. The family he'd been fighting for 15 years. The enemy he'd spent my entire adult life trying to destroy. I'd thanked him, offered to buy him dinner, given him my business card, and he'd known from the moment he pulled me out of the ocean. He'd known exactly who I was. The business card sat on my desk, the phone number seeming to pulse with warning and promise in equal measure. I should throw it away, block his number, pretend the last hour had never happened. Instead, I saved his contact information in my phone and spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of woman felt drawn to her father's greatest enemy. The kind who'd spent 6 years running from one dangerous man, only to find herself inexplicably attracted to another. The car arrived exactly at 7. Not a taxi or ride-share, but a sleek black sedan with a driver who knew my name before I gave it. "Miss Carter, Mr. Brunarelli sends his regards." 3 days had passed since the gallery. 3 days of staring at my phone, debating whether to call him first or wait for him to choose the timing he'd insisted upon. Apparently, he'd made his choice. I dressed carefully. An ivory silk blouse that Hannah had convinced me to buy last year, paired with tailored black pants and the only decent heels I owned. Professional enough to feel armored, feminine enough to feel confident. My hair fell loose around my shoulders, and I'd applied makeup with more attention than usual. The driver opened the door for me. Leather seats, subtle cologne lingering in the air, classical music playing softly through hidden speakers. This was a different world than the one I inhabited, where luxury meant a good cup of coffee and paying rent on time. My phone buzzed as we pulled away from my building. Hannah's face filled the screen. "Hey!" I answered, trying to sound casual. Where are you? I stopped by your place and you're not home. Meeting with a potential client. Dinner to discuss a project. The lie tasted bitter. Hannah had been my friend since elementary school, back when my biggest worry was passing math tests and avoiding the mean girls in 7th grade. She deserved better than my deception. This late? Olivia, are you sure? It's fine. Really, just a working dinner. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up before she could press further, guilt sitting heavy in my stomach alongside anticipation. The restaurant occupied a narrow building in the North End, Boston's Italian district. No flashy sign, just a number beside an understated door, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing unless you knew to look for it. Inside was a revelation. Exposed brick walls, candlelight dancing across white tablecloths, the scent of garlic and fresh bread and something herbal I couldn't identify. Only 6 tables, all empty except for one in the far corner where Giovanni sat, reading something on his phone. He looked up as I approached, stood in one smooth motion, all controlled grace and masculine presence. Tonight he wore a navy suit with a crisp white shirt, no tie, top button undone. The casualness felt deliberate, like he'd calculated exactly how approachable to appear. Olivia, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? The question came out sharper than intended. His mouth curved slightly. There's always a choice. You could have sent the driver away and missed whatever this is. My curiosity wouldn't allow it. Then we share that affliction. He pulled out my chair, waited until I sat before returning to his own seat. Wine? Just water for now. A server appeared instantly, silent and efficient, pouring water into crystal glasses before disappearing again. We were alone in the restaurant, I realized. Every other table empty, no other diners arriving. You reserved the entire place. I value privacy for difficult conversations. Is that what this is? A difficult conversation? Isn't it? His dark eyes held mine, unflinching. You know who I am now. I saw the moment you recognized my last name at the gallery. The way your expression changed. No point in denying it. Giovanni Brunarelli, head of the Brunelli crime family. My father's enemy for the last 15 years. Suspected head, he corrected mildly. The federal government has yet to prove anything concrete. That's not a denial. No. He leaned back, studying me. It's not. The bluntness surprised me. I'd expected deflection, carefully crafted lies, the kind of verbal dancing my father excelled at. Instead, Giovanni offered simple truth. You knew who I was, I said. On the beach, the moment you saw my face. Your eyes are very distinctive. Your father has the same shade of gray, but yours are green. I've seen surveillance photos and you saved me anyway. Would you have preferred I let you drown? I'd have preferred not being part of whatever game you're playing. Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or frustration. This isn't a game, Olivia. If it were, I'm losing badly. The server returned with bread and olive oil, a plate of antipasto that neither of us had ordered. Giovanni dismissed him with a subtle nod. Why am I here? I asked. Really? What do you want from me? He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his untouched wine glass. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before. I inherited this life when I was 19. My father was killed in a territorial dispute with the O'Sullivan organization. Your father's people put 3 bullets in his chest and left him to bleed out in an alley. I flinched. Knowing my father was a criminal was different from hearing the specific details of his violence. I had a sister, Camila. She was 14, terrified. The entire organization was fracturing, ready to tear itself apart or be absorbed by rivals. I had 2 choices. Step up or watch everything my father built collapse and leave my sister with no protection. So, you chose the family business. I chose my sister's safety. Everything else followed. He met my eyes. You understand that, don't you? Making impossible choices to protect the people you love. I did. God help me. I understood perfectly. I was 21 when I discovered what my father really was. I said slowly. Home from college. Overheard him on the phone. He was ordering someone's execution like he was scheduling a dentist appointment. Casual, clinical. What did you do? Confronted him. Demanded to know how long he'd been lying to me. He didn't even pretend to be ashamed. Just told me it was family business and I needed to accept my role in it. Which was, the memory still tasted like ash. Marriage to one of his lieutenants, a man twice my age who looked at me like property he'd been promised. My father said it would strengthen alliances, ensure the family's future, like I was a chess piece instead of a person. Giovanni's jaw tightened. You refused. I ran, packed one suitcase, emptied my savings account, disappeared in the middle of the night, lived on a friend's couch for 3 months while I figured out how to support myself, put myself through the rest of my architecture degree. Working 3 jobs, built a life that had nothing to do with him. But he never let you go. He calls it love. I call it control. He still thinks I'll come back eventually, resume my place in his world. The forced marriage idea came up again 2 nights ago at the dinner where I followed you home. So he admitted to that too. You've been watching me, protecting you. There's a difference, is there? I leaned forward, anger and something more complicated burning in my chest. You pull me out of the ocean, knowing exactly whose daughter I am. You show up at a gallery I'm attending. You send cars and issue invitations like commands. You follow me home and park outside my building like a sentry. What am I supposed to think? That I can't stop thinking about you. The admission came out raw, unguarded. That I dove into that water before my brain registered who you were, and by the time I realized, it was too late. You'd already gotten under my skin. The air between us felt charged, electric. My heart hammered against my ribs. We're enemies, I said, but it came out as a whisper. Our fathers are enemies. We're just 2 people trying to survive the legacies we inherited. The server materialized with the first course. Pasta with seafood, delicate and aromatic. We ate in silence. The food exquisite but barely registering against the intensity of everything unspoken. Tell me about your architecture, Giovanni said eventually. What draws you to adaptive reuse? The subject change felt deliberate, giving us both space to breathe. I grabbed onto it gratefully, taking something broken and finding its purpose again, seeing potential where others see ruins. There's poetry in it, like people maybe, or maybe I just like fixing things. Can we be fixed? People like us? I looked at him across the candlelight, this dangerous man who'd saved my life, who understood the weight of unwanted legacies, who looked at me like I was something precious instead of a weapon to be wielded. I don't know, but maybe we don't need to be fixed. Maybe we just need to be seen. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. The contact sent electricity up my arm into my chest, pulling somewhere low in my stomach. I see you, Olivia Carter. Every part I've discovered so far, and I find myself wanting to know more. I turned my hand over, let our palms touch. His skin was warm, calloused in unexpected places, a working man's hands despite the expensive suits. This is insane, I breathed. He stood, still holding my hand, drew me up with him. We were inches apart now, close enough that I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, count the individual beats of his pulse in his throat. If I kiss you, he said quietly, everything changes. You understand that? I understand. He leaned down. I tilted my face up. Our breath mingled, warm and wine-sweet, the space between us shrinking to nothing. His phone erupted with sound, harsh, urgent, shattering the moment like glass. Giovanni closed his eyes briefly, jaw clenched with frustration. I'm sorry. I have to take this. He stepped away, answered in Italian, his voice dropping into tones I couldn't follow. But I heard the shift from the man who'd been about to kiss me to the leader commanding his organization. Sharp, decisive, controlled. The call lasted 90 seconds. When he hung up, his expression had hardened into something remote. I need to go. There's a situation at one of the docks. Disputed territory, potential violence. Your world calling. Always. He moved close again, brushed his thumb across my cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made my throat tight. "I'll have my driver take you home with security. I don't want you alone tonight. Giovanni, please, let me do this one thing. Let me know you're safe." I nodded, unable to form words around the conflicting emotions rioting through me. He pressed his lips to my forehead, lingering there. "I'll see you again soon. Promise." Then he was gone, disappearing into the back of the restaurant, leaving me standing beside a table full of half-eaten food and the ghost of an almost kiss. The driver took me home in silence. A second car followed us. Security I hadn't asked for, but accepted anyway. Upstairs in my apartment, I stood at the window watching them take up positions on the street. My phone showed missed calls from Hannah and Jessica. I'd deal with their worry tomorrow or tonight. I touched my lips, imagining what might have happened if that call hadn't come through, wondering if I'd just escaped disaster or missed an opportunity I'd regret forever. The truth terrified me. I already knew which one it was. The week that followed our interrupted dinner became a study in contradictions. By day, I maintained the facade of normalcy, finishing the library proposal, responding to client emails, pretending my world hadn't tilted completely off its axis. By night, I slipped into Giovanni's orbit like a planet caught by gravity it couldn't resist. We met 3 times, each encounter more dangerous than the last. The first was at his office, a legitimate import business housed in a refurbished warehouse near the harbor. He'd invited me under the pretense of discussing potential architectural work. The building needed updating, he'd said, historical preservation while modernizing the infrastructure. I'd believed the lie because I wanted to. His office occupied the top floor, all glass and steel with views of the water. We looked at blueprints for exactly 10 minutes before he kissed me against his desk. His hands tangling in my hair, my back arching into him. The kiss was everything the almost kiss at the restaurant had promised. Consuming, desperate, inevitable. "This is a terrible idea," I gasped when we broke apart. "The worst," he agreed, and kissed me again. The second meeting happened at a small bookstore in Cambridge, neutral territory, where neither of our worlds held dominion. We sat in the back corner, surrounded by dusty volumes of poetry and philosophy, talking for 3 hours about everything except the impossibility of what we were doing. He told me about raising his sister after their father died, the weight of responsibility he'd carried at 19. I told him about building my architecture practice from nothing, the satisfaction of creating something clean in a world defined by dirt. The third time, we didn't talk much at all. His apartment, late evening, rain streaming down the windows. We moved from doorway to couch to bedroom with the urgency of people who knew time was running out. Afterward, lying tangled in expensive sheets, I traced the scar on his chin. "How did you get this? Knife fight when I was 22? The other guy looked worse. "That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be." He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. "I'm not a good man, Olivia. I've done things that would horrify you. I know what you are. Do you? Or are you seeing what you want to see?" I didn't have an answer for that. Lauren discovered us on day 5, a photo someone had posted to social media from the bookstore. Distant but unmistakable. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, waving her phone like evidence at a trial. "Are you insane?" She didn't wait for an invitation, pushing past me into the living room. "Giovanni Brunarelli, Olivia, the actual head of a crime family. It's not what you think." "Really? Because I think you're sleeping with a man who probably has blood on his hands." Literally. The accusation stung because it was true. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me. Make it make sense." Couldn't. How could I articulate the way he looked at me like I was something precious? The way we understood each other's inherited trauma without needing words? The way his touch made me feel alive for the first time in years? "I care about him," I said finally, the admission feeling both inadequate and overwhelming. Lauren's expression crumbled from anger to fear. "Olivia, please, you're going to end up dead, or worse, trapped in the same world you've spent 6 years running from. Is that what you want?" "Of course not." "Then end it now before it's too late." She left 20 minutes later, unconvinced by my promises to be careful. That evening, Jessica and Hannah called together. Their worry a three-way chorus of concern that made my chest ache with guilt. They'd been my constants, my chosen family when blood had failed me. And here I was, lying to them, risking everything for a man I'd known less than 3 weeks. I should have listened, should have recognized the warnings for what they were. Instead, I texted Giovanni that I missed him. The attack came on day 7, just after sunset. I was packing documents into my work bag, preparing for a client meeting the next morning, when I heard the vehicles pull up outside. Multiple engines moving with purpose rather than the casual pace of residents returning home. Something primal in my brain screamed danger before my conscious mind caught up. I moved to the window, peered down through the blinds. 5 men emerged from 2 black SUVs. Big, professional, moving with military precision. They weren't trying to be subtle. One of them looked up directly at my window and spoke into a phone. My phone buzzed. My father's number. "You have 60 seconds to come downstairs voluntarily, Olivia. Otherwise, my men will collect you. Your choice. You can't do this. Watch me. You belong home, not playing architect in a slum apartment. Liam O'Connor is waiting. The marriage happens next month." The line went dead. 60 seconds. I grabbed my keys, my phone, considered running for the back exit, but this building only had one way out and they'd planned for that. I was trapped. 45 seconds. My phone rang again. Different number. "Giovanni, don't come down." His voice was sharp, urgent. "I'm 3 minutes away. My men are 2 minutes out. Stay inside and lock your door." "How did you?" "I have people watching you, always. Lock the door." Now, I should have been angry about the surveillance. Instead, I felt relief flood through me as I engaged every lock on my door. Outside, more vehicles arrived. I watched from the window as 3 more SUVs pulled up, surrounding my father's men. Giovanni's people emerged. 8 men in dark suits moving with the same professional precision. Then Giovanni himself appeared, stepping from the lead vehicle like a king surveying his battlefield. Even from 4 floors up, I felt the power radiating from him. The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds before my father's man made a move toward the building entrance. Giovanni's men blocked the path. Words were exchanged, too quiet for me to hear. Violence hung in the air like static before a storm. I couldn't stay up here. Whatever happened next, I needed to face it. The stairs felt endless. By the time I pushed through the lobby door, both groups had spread out, creating a corridor of tension between them. Giovanni stood at one end, my father's lieutenant at the other, and I walked into the space between. "Olivia." Giovanni's voice carried warning. "Go back inside." "Miss Carter." The lieutenant was a man I recognized from childhood dinners, now looking at me like problematic cargo. "Your father wants you home. Don't make this difficult." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "That's not your decision." "Actually, it is." I planted my feet, channeling every ounce of stubborn fury I possessed. "I'm 27 years old. I make my own choices and I choose to tell my father to go to hell." The lieutenant's expression hardened. "Your father anticipated defiance. We have orders." 2 of his men moved toward me. I stepped back instinctively, colliding with someone solid. Giovanni's hands closed on my shoulders, steadying me. His body a wall between me and my father's men. "She said no." His voice dropped into registers that made grown men flinch. "That's the end of the conversation. This doesn't concern you, Brunarelli." "Everything concerning her concerns me." The lieutenant smiled without humor. "Robert Carter will be interested to hear that his daughter is sleeping with his enemy. That ought to expedite the wedding." Rage whited out my vision. "Tell my father that if he sends anyone else to collect me, I'll go straight to the FBI with every piece of evidence I have about his organization. Names, dates, financial records, everything. Empty threats from a scared girl. Try me." One of my father's men lunged. I didn't even see Giovanni move, but suddenly the man was on the ground, arm twisted at an unnatural angle, screaming. Another tried to grab me from the side. Giovanni's people reacted instantly. A choreographed violence that ended with 2 of my father's men bleeding on the pavement and the rest retreating toward their vehicles. The lieutenant pulled a gun. 8 guns answered, all pointed at him. "Leave," Giovanni said quietly. "Tell Robert Carter that his daughter is under my protection now. Anyone who touches her answers to me." The standoff held for 5 thundering heartbeats before the lieutenant lowered his weapon. "This isn't over." "No, it's not." They left, engines roaring aggression as they disappeared into the night. The moment they were gone, Giovanni turned to me, his hands framing my face, eyes scanning for injury. "Are you hurt?" "No, just scared and furious." I was shaking, adrenaline making my voice unsteady. He was gonna lock me up, force me to marry someone like I'm property in a business transaction. "I know. That's why you can't stay here. Pack what you need. My men will secure the rest later." "Giovanni, please." The word cost him. "Let me protect you, just until we figure this out." I looked at the blood on the pavement, at the building I'd called home for 3 years, at the man who just fought for my right to choose. The decision felt inevitable, like it was already a done deal the second he hauled me out of the ocean. "I need to grab a few things from my apartment. Important papers and stuff. Give me 5 minutes. I'm coming upstairs with you." I moved with robotic precision. Laptop, phone charger, changes of clothes, the usual toiletries, and from way in the back of my closet, that encrypted USB drive I'd stashed away 6 years ago. The one that had photos of my dad's safe, digital copies of his most damning records. My get-out-of-jail-free card, in case I ever needed some serious leverage. Giovanni just watched me silently as I packed, his being there both comforting and seriously unsettling because of what it implied. "Ready?" he asked. I took one last look around my apartment, at the life I'd built from scratch, now being left behind because I'd fallen for the wrong guy. Or maybe the right guy at absolutely the wrong time. "Ready?" His car reeked of leather and danger. As we drove away from my building, I watched it shrink in the rearview mirror, wondering if I'd just made the smartest or dumbest decision of my life. Giovanni's hand found mine in the darkness between us. "I'm not going to let him hurt you." I squeezed his hand back, hoping like hell it was a promise he could actually keep. The safe house wasn't at all what I pictured. No armed fortress or compound hidden away behind electric fences. Instead, Giovanni took me to a 2-story colonial in a super quiet suburb, maybe 40 minutes outside of Boston. The kind of neighborhood where people walk their dogs and kids shoot hoops in their driveways. Totally normal, and I'm sure that was intentional. "This is where you're hiding me?" I asked as we pulled into the garage. "This is where you'll be comfortable while we get this sorted out." 2 guards, both low-key. "They'll be staying in the converted apartment above the garage." He killed the engine and turned to look at me. "I know it's not ideal. Ideal would be not needing protection from my own freaking father." The house smelled like fresh paint and brand new furniture. Neutral colors, comfy, but totally impersonal, like a really fancy rental. Giovanni showed me the security system, the panic buttons installed in every room, the reinforced doors that looked like regular doors but definitely weren't. Basically, planning for violence disguised as suburban life. "The second bedroom is set up as an office," he said, gesturing toward the stairs. "The internet is secure. Whatever you need for work, just tell Marco and he'll take care of it." I dropped my bag on the couch, and exhaustion hit me all at once. Just 24 hours ago, I was finishing up a proposal in my apartment. Now I was in something like witness protection. Except the criminal organization I was hiding from was run by my own flesh and blood. "I should let you get some rest," Giovanni said. But he didn't move toward the door. "Stay, please, just for a little while." He sat down next to me, and I leaned into him, breathing in his scent, letting his solid presence just ground me. We didn't talk. Didn't need to. Eventually, I fell asleep with my head on his shoulder. And when I woke up a few hours later, someone had put a blanket over me and left a glass of water on the coffee table. The first 3 days all blurred together in a daze of trying to adjust and just general anxiety. I set up my laptop in the office and sent carefully worded emails to clients explaining that I'd relocated temporarily for family stuff. The library project needed some revisions. The museum commission wanted a preliminary meeting. Life just kept on going even though mine had been completely turned upside down. Jessica called on day 2. "Where the hell are you? I went by your apartment and there's police tape everywhere." What happened? I'd already prepped the lie. Hated how easily it came out. There was an incident. Some guys tried to break in. I'm staying with a friend until it's all sorted out. Which friend? I'll come stay with you. It's better if I don't say right now. I'm safe. Promise. I just need a few days to figure things out. This is about him, isn't it? That Giovanni guy Lauren told us about. I could hear the hurt and fear in her voice. Liv, please tell me you're not in way over your head. I'm handling it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. I love you, Jess. I'll call you in a few days. Hannah's call was even worse. She cried, begged me to come stay with her and her husband instead. Insisted that whatever trouble I was in, we could face it together. I almost caved, almost told her everything. But dragging my friends into this meant putting them in danger, and I'd already cost Giovanni 2 men in that shootout outside my apartment. I wasn't about to add Hannah or Jessica or Lauren to that list. Giovanni came to see me every evening after dealing with whatever business he had to take care of during the day. We'd eat dinner together, talk about anything and everything except the building pressure from both our worlds. He told me about some property in the warehouse district he was thinking about buying, how adaptive reuse could turn it into mixed-use commercial space. I showed him some preliminary sketches, explained the load calculations and what it would take for historical preservation. We played house while armed guards patrolled outside. On the 4th day, she showed up. I was working when the doorbell rang. Marco answered it, and I heard a woman's voice, warm but insistent. I'm not leaving until I meet her. Move aside. The woman who walked into my temporary office was absolutely stunning. Dark hair like Giovanni's pulled back into an elegant ponytail. Olive skin, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that sized me up with the precision of someone trained to spot weaknesses. She was wearing a tailored gray suit that just screamed lawyer. Expensive briefcase in one hand, and balanced on her hip was a little boy with messy black curls and huge brown eyes. You must be Olivia. She held out her free hand. Camilla Brunarelli, Giovanni's sister. This is Thomas, my son. I stood up and shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. He's mentioned you. I'm sure he has. Probably told you I'd wait patiently until he thought it was okay for us to meet. She sat Thomas down on the couch, where he immediately pulled out a tablet and headphones. I'm not patient, and I needed to see the woman who's made my brother lose his mind. I'm not. Spare me the denials. Giovanni's had exactly 2 priorities for the last 16 years. Protecting this family and building up his power. Now all of a sudden he's starting a war with the O'Sullivans over a woman he barely knows. She crossed her legs. So yeah, you've made him lose it. I needed to understand why. Her directness was a breath of fresh air after days of tiptoeing around every conversation. And what's your assessment? You're not what I was expecting. You're actually nervous, which means you care what I think. That's a good sign. Camilla's expression softened a little. I know who your father is. I know what this all means for Giovanni, for all of us. But I also know my brother, and he doesn't do things without a reason. If he thinks you're worth fighting for, I trust his judgment. We talked for over an hour while Thomas colored on the couch, occasionally showing us his artwork. Camilla was a corporate lawyer specializing in business acquisitions and legitimization strategies. For the last 5 years, she'd been working to transition the Brunarelli holdings toward legitimate businesses. Real estate, import businesses with proper licensing, investments in legit companies. The slow work, she admitted. The old guard fights me every step of the way. They've built their identities around being feared, and they see going legit as a sign of weakness. Does Giovanni want out of the illegal stuff? He wants options for himself, for me, for Thomas. My son shouldn't inherit a criminal empire. He should inherit businesses that don't need armed guards and offshore accounts. She glanced at Thomas. I could see the love and determination battling it out in her expression. That's why I do what I do. Building an exit strategy 1 property at a time. When Giovanni arrived that evening, Camilla was still there. He stopped in the doorway, surprise flashing across his face. Hello, brother. Your security is awful. I just walked right in. You're my sister. They know to let you through. Convenient excuse. She stood up and kissed him on the cheek. She's lovely. Don't screw this up. After she left, Giovanni found me in the kitchen making coffee that neither of us was going to drink. I should have warned you she might show up. She's protective of you. I get it. She's terrifying when she wants to be just like her brother. He smiled, and the expression transformed his face from intimidating to almost boyish. Fair assessment. The piece lasted 6 more days. I was going over some blueprints when Giovanni arrived early. His face like it was carved from stone, fury radiating off him in waves. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, downed it, and then poured another. What happened? Shootout down at the northern docks. Disputed territory. 2 of my men are dead. One of O'Sullivan's too. He just stared at the amber liquid. Your father sent word. Hand you over within 48 hours, or he considers it an act of war. My stomach dropped. He's using me as an excuse to escalate things. He's been looking for an excuse for months. This just gave him the justification he needed. So what do? I tried negotiating through intermediaries, offered him territorial concessions, financial compensation. He turned down everything. He wants you back. Wants that marriage to Liam O'Connor to happen. Wants to prove that I can't protect what I say is mine. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. A storm was moving in, and dark clouds were blotting out the sunset. The lights flickered once, twice. I'm not going back, I said quietly. I won't let you. Then people are going to die. Your people. Maybe you. Giovanni set his glass down and walked over to where I was standing. He framed my face with his hands, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. I fell in love with you the second you opened your eyes on that beach. I didn't want to. Fought it every step of the way. But there it is. The truth. I love you, Olivia Carter. And I'll burn my entire empire to the ground before I let your father use you as a pawn. Tears blurred my vision. I love you too. That's why I can't let you destroy everything for me. Then we'll find another way. The storm broke. Rain was hammering against the windows with the same fury as the night he'd saved me. I thought back to that moment. Drowning and helpless. Pulled from the darkness by a man I should have hated. Full circle. Except this time we were both drowning in circumstances that neither of us could control. There might be a way, I said slowly. Something that gives us some leverage against my father. Makes him back down without any more bloodshed. What? I grabbed the encrypted USB drive out of my laptop bag and held it up. 6 years ago, when I left home, I knew I'd need some kind of insurance. Something to keep him from dragging me back. I photographed every single document in his safe. Financial records, names of corrupt officials, details of his illegal operations, everything. Giovanni stared at the drive. You've had this the whole time. I copied everything from the flash drive to an encrypted cloud account, too. Multiple backups. If anything happens to me, if I don't check in every week, the files automatically go to the FBI. You'd threaten your own father with federal prison? He threatened to sell me into marriage. We're even. I closed his fingers around the drive. This is how we put an end to this. Not with more violence, but with the truth, or at least the threat of it. For a long moment, Giovanni didn't say anything. Then he pulled me close, holding me like I was something incredibly precious and terribly fragile. Your father will never forgive you for this. I stopped needing his forgiveness a long time ago. I need his capitulation. There's a difference. Outside, lightning split the sky. Inside, we held each other while the storm raged. 2 people caught between impossible loyalties, choosing each other no matter the cost. Tomorrow we'd plan the confrontation. Tomorrow we'd weaponize my father's sins against him. Tomorrow we'd find out if love could actually survive when it meant betraying your own family. Tonight we just held on. The Grandant Hotel was on neutral ground. A century-old building that had seen countless negotiations between Boston's underworld players. Giovanni picked it on purpose. Public enough to discourage any outright violence, but private enough for conversations that couldn't happen in broad daylight. I dressed like I was going to war. Charcoal gray suit, My hair pulled back tight, barely any makeup, armor disguised as professionalism. My hands were shaking as I buttoned my jacket, and I had to stop a couple of times to just breathe through the panic that was threatening to swallow me whole. "You don't have to do this," Giovanni said from the doorway. He was wearing black from head to toe, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. "I can handle the meeting on my own. He's my father. This is my fight just as much as it is yours. He'll say things designed to hurt you, to make you second-guess yourself, second-guess us." I looked him in the eye in the mirror. I know exactly who he is. That's why I need to be there. The drive took about 30 minutes. Giovanni's hand found mine in the back seat, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Neither of us said anything. What was there to say that hadn't already been laid bare over the last 6 weeks? We loved each other. We'd made our choice. Now we were about to find out what that choice was going to cost us. The hotel's ballroom had been cleared out. A single long table positioned right in the center, like a boardroom all set up for a bloodbath. 12 chairs on each side, spaced out evenly. Giovanni's men were already in place when we got there, standing at attention like soldiers getting ready for battle. I recognized a few faces from that shootout outside my apartment. Men who'd bled for me, who'd fought because their boss had told them to. My father's crew arrived about 10 minutes later. Robert Carter walked like he owned the damn world, flanked by men whose suits couldn't quite hide their weapons. He saw me standing next to Giovanni and stopped dead, his expression shifting from surprise to stone-cold fury in a heartbeat. "Olivia, step away from him now." "No, I won't ask you twice." "Then stop asking." I moved even closer to Giovanni. A deliberate statement. "I'm here to try and end this peacefully, if that's even possible." Robert's laugh was harsh, humorless. "You think you have any say in this? You're a kid playing at rebellion while the adults handle the real problems. I'm 27 years old. Stop treating me like a piece of property you misplaced. You are my daughter, my own flesh and blood, and you've disgraced that blood by spreading your legs for my enemy." Giovanni's hand tightened on my waist, the only sign of his rage. His voice stayed calm and controlled. "Careful, Carter. That's the woman I love. You're insulting love." Robert spat out the word like it was poison. "You don't know what it means. This is strategy. You're using her to get to me. Believe whatever you want. It doesn't change the fact that Olivia stays with me, even if it means one of us dies. That can be arranged." The temperature in the room dropped like 10 degrees. 12 guns on each side. 24 men all ready to turn this negotiation into a full-blown massacre. I stepped forward, putting myself right between the two men who'd shaped my life in such completely different ways. "Enough, both of you." I looked at my father, really seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Not the powerful figure from my childhood, but a man so consumed by the need to be in control that he'd destroy his own daughter rather than lose face. "You want me back so you can marry me off to Liam O'Connor. Strengthen your alliance with the Irish faction. Prove that you still command respect. I'm just a strategic asset to you, nothing more. You're my daughter. When was the last time you asked me about my life, my work? What makes me happy?" I shook my head. "You don't love me, Dad. You love the idea of me as an obedient piece on your chessboard. But I'm not playing anymore. Then you leave me no choice." Robert nodded to his men. "Take her." No one moved. Giovanni's people blocked every approach, their hands inside their jackets, ready to draw their weapons. The standoff held, and violence was balanced on a knife's edge. "I have copies of everything," I said clearly, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Every single document in your safe. Financial records proving you're laundering money through shell corporations. Names of all the federal officials you've bribed. Details about the Hartford assassination back in 2019. The weapon shipment through the Providence docks last year. All of it digitally backed up in multiple locations." Robert's face went white, then red. "You're lying. 6 years ago, when you tried to force me into that first marriage, I photographed everything. It was my insurance policy in case you ever came after me again. It's been sitting in encrypted cloud storage ever since. Programmed to automatically send to the FBI if I don't check in every week. You'd betray your own father? Send me to federal prison? You'd sell your own daughter into a forced marriage. We're both capable of some pretty terrible things when we're pushed. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. An email draft addressed to the Boston FBI field office with file attachments clearly visible. One click, that's all it takes. Everything you've built, everything you've protected for the last 30 years, gone. Federal indictment, asset seizure, RICO charges that'll bury you for life. Silence fell like a physical weight. Every man in that room understood what I'd just done. Mutually assured destruction. The nuclear option in a conflict that had already cost way too many lives. Robert's senior advisor, a gray-haired man I remembered from childhood dinners, spoke up quietly. Robert, maybe we should hear what Brunarelli has to offer. Stay out of this, Patrick. We lost 3 of our guys last week, and 2 more the week before. We're bleeding money and men while Brunarelli just keeps building up his power in territories we can't even hold anymore. Patrick's voice held the weariness of a man who'd seen way too much violence. Some of us are just tired of war. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the O'Sullivan contingent. Not from everyone, but from enough people to matter. My father's absolute authority was starting to crack. Giovanni sensed the shift. I'm proposing a territorial redistribution. The northern shipping routes, the ones you've been fighting for, they're yours. They're more profitable anyway. Better access to Canadian imports. We'll keep control of the southern ports, which are easier to defend and have clear boundaries. No more disputed zones. And my daughter stays with me by her own choice, which you will respect, after she threatened me with federal prison. You expect me to just accept that? I expect you to be pragmatic. Giovanni's voice dropped into a register that just commanded attention. War between our families benefits no one except the feds, who are just waiting to exploit our weakness. You've lost 5 men in the last month. I've lost 3, including 2 loyal soldiers who've bled for me for over a decade. How many more deaths before you admit that this just isn't sustainable? Another one of my father's men spoke up. He was younger but clearly respected. He's right, boss. The northern routes are worth more. We consolidate there. Strengthen our position. Stop just wasting resources on territories that we're losing anyway. Robert's jaw clenched. You're all a bunch of cowards. We're survivors, Patrick corrected him gently. There's a difference. I served your father and I've served you for 33 years. I'm asking you to consider that maybe, just this once, compromise is better for the family than pride. Giovanni pressed his advantage. $2 million in compensation for the territories you've lost over the last 3 years of fighting. Cash payment delivered through whatever channels you want, plus the northern routes forever, formalized through our usual go-betweens. I watched my father weigh the money, the territories, and the end of a costly war against his need for absolute control and his fury at being challenged by his own daughter. The scales tipped back and forth. If I agree, Robert said slowly, she's dead to me. You understand that? I have no daughter. Those words should have hurt, should have felt like a knife twisting between my ribs. Instead, all I felt was relief. I can live with that if you can. Fine. He spat out the word. The northern routes, $2 million in compensation, and you never contact me again. Those are my terms. Agreed, Giovanni said before I could even respond. Patrick pulled some documents out of his briefcase. Legal papers that formalized the territorial divisions, and language that was carefully crafted to mean everything to us and nothing to law enforcement. Both sides reviewed, haggled over a few small points, and added a few clauses. It took 2 hours to hammer out the details that would reshape Boston's criminal landscape. Through it all, my father didn't look at me once. As the meeting wrapped up, as men shook hands with the weariness of former enemies agreeing to a ceasefire, Giovanni pulled me aside. 3 of my guys walked out, he said quietly. Vinny, Carlo, and Paolo. They think this makes me look weak, compromising because of a woman. They're talking about starting their own operation. What are you going to do? Let them try. They'll fail without the infrastructure I've built. And when they come crawling back, I'll have made my point. He cupped my cheek in his hand. You were incredible in there. Terrifying and magnificent. I just ended my relationship with my father forever. You freed yourself from a man who never saw you as anything more than a possession. There's a big difference. Outside, it had started raining again. It always rains during the important moments, as if the universe was providing commentary on our choices. Giovanni's car was waiting, the engine running, the exhaust ghosting in the cold air. I looked back at the hotel one last time. I could see my father's silhouette in the window. He raised a hand, but not in greeting, in dismissal. An ending without any ceremony. "Ready?" Giovanni asked. I turned away from the past, from the man whose blood I shared, but whose world I'd rejected. "Yes, take me home." Home. It's funny how that word had changed its meaning. It wasn't a place anymore, but a person. Someone who'd pulled me out of the water and never let go. Even when holding on meant risking absolutely everything. The car pulled away, taking us into whatever was coming next. Behind us, peace was bought with the truth and with leverage. Ahead of us, there was uncertainty, but we were together. Sometimes that had to be enough. 3 months felt like both an eternity and like no time at all. The truce held, but it was the kind of peace that needed constant watching, like walking on ice that could crack at any moment. Giovanni lost 2 cousins after everything went down. Distant relatives who'd been with the family for over a decade. But they just couldn't accept what they saw as weakness. Compromising for love, they called it. Making deals with the enemy because of a woman. They'd tried to start their own faction. Recruited 3 other guys who felt the same way. They even tried to sabotage one of Giovanni's legitimate import shipments to prove that he'd gone soft. He'd handled it with surgical precision. No one died, but they were permanently exiled from Boston. The message was clear. Loyalty meant that you accepted his leadership. Even when you didn't agree with his choices, the family emerged smaller but more unified. Those who stuck around understood that Giovanni's world was changing, and they could either change with it or just get out. I'd moved into his brownstone in Beacon Hill, but I kept my old apartment as an office. Clients seemed more comfortable meeting in a neutral space, and I needed a place that was just mine. Keeping my professional life separate from Giovanni's world felt important. It was a boundary that kept me grounded. My architecture practice was just taking off in ways I never could have imagined. Word had gotten around about the library renovation, and all of a sudden I was getting calls from preservation societies and museum boards. The biggest win happened 6 weeks after the hotel meeting. A contract to oversee the adaptive reuse of the old harbor building. It was a historic waterfront structure that was being converted into a mixed-use commercial space. It was the kind of project that could make a career. "You're going to be too successful for me," Giovanni had joked when I'd shown him the contract. "You have to make an appointment just to see me? You own half the properties I'm redesigning. I think you can manage." My father called once a month, always on the 15th, always brief. Business updates delivered in a tone so neutral, it could have been a stranger reporting weather patterns. He never asked about my life, never acknowledged Giovanni's existence, never said my name. The first call had been the hardest. "The northern routes are performing above projections," he'd said without preamble. "Thought you should know the arrangement is working." "Good. I'm glad." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we'd never say. "That's all I had. Goodbye." He'd hung up before I could respond. Every subsequent call followed the same pattern. Information exchange devoid of emotion. A father and daughter reduced to business associates with a shared history that neither wanted to examine. I'd made peace with it. You couldn't force someone to see you when they'd decided you were invisible. My friends had been harder to reconcile with. Jessica, Hannah, and Lauren had been furious when I'd finally sat down with them 6 weeks ago at a coffee shop in Cambridge. 3 hours of tears and accusations and desperate pleas for me to reconsider. "He's dangerous," Lauren had said for the 20th time. "You're going to get hurt, or worse. I know what he is. I'm choosing him anyway." That's insane. Maybe, but it's my choice to make. The turning point had come when I'd introduced them to Camila and Thomas. Something about seeing Giovanni on the floor building block towers with his 5-year-old nephew, watching him be gentle and patient and utterly devoted to the kid, had softened their resistance. "He's different with family," Jessica had admitted afterward. I still think you're crazy, but I can see why you love him. Hannah had taken longer to come around, but she'd called last week to invite Giovanni and me to dinner with her and her husband. Progress, however tentative. Lauren remained skeptical, watching Giovanni like she expected him to reveal his true monster nature at any moment. But she'd stopped actively campaigning for me to leave, which I counted as a victory. The formal peace agreement was signed on a gray December afternoon back at the Grand Hotel where we'd first confronted my father. This time, a neutral mediator presided, a man respected by both families despite having no formal connection to either, a former federal prosecutor turned private arbitrator. He'd overseen criminal disputes for 20 years. The ceremony was brief, clinical. Signatures on documents that would never see the inside of a courthouse but carried more weight than any legal contract. My father attended but didn't speak to me, didn't even look in my direction. Giovanni's hand found mine under the table, a steady anchor. Afterward, as both contingents filed out, Patrick, my father's advisor, paused beside me. He asks about you, he said quietly. Never directly, but he asks. Wants to know if you're safe, if you're happy. Too proud to say it himself, but he cares. In his way. His way destroyed any chance we had at a real relationship. I know. Just thought you should know the anger isn't all there is. Patrick squeezed my shoulder briefly before walking away. I didn't know what to do with that information. Didn't know if it changed anything. Probably not. Giovanni had kept his promise about legitimizing the family businesses. Camila worked tirelessly, using her legal expertise to structure deals that were profitable without crossing into criminal territory. Real estate acquisitions, licensed import companies, investments in technology startups. The illegal operations hadn't disappeared entirely. They existed in gray areas I tried not to examine too closely, but violence had decreased dramatically. No more late-night calls about shootings. No more weeks where he'd come home with tension carved into every line of his body. The weight he'd carried for 16 years was slowly lifting, replaced by something that almost looked like hope. It was a Saturday afternoon when everything crystallized into something resembling normalcy. We were at the house, the safe house that had become simply home. Camila sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, reviewing contracts for a property acquisition. Thomas sprawled on the living room floor with coloring books and markers, creating elaborate scenes he'd narrate in dramatic detail. Giovanni and I stood on the small back deck, watching late autumn light filter through bare tree branches. The air carried the bite of approaching winter, and I'd wrapped myself in one of his sweaters, drowning in fabric that smelled like him. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his arm around my waist, pulling me against his side. "How strange this is. 3 months ago I was terrified. Now I'm watching your nephew color while your sister works on business deals. And it feels almost normal. Almost. There are still guards watching the perimeter. You still carry a gun under your jacket. We're still living in a world where violence is always possible. Does that scare you?" I considered the question seriously, sometimes, but I'm more afraid of what life would be like without you in it. He turned me to face him, hands framing my face in that gesture I'd come to associate with important moments. "I fell in love with you when you opened your eyes on that beach. Thought I was losing my mind. Thought maybe I'd finally snapped under the pressure of running this empire. But you were real. You are real. The best thing that's ever happened to me. Even though it cost you allies, made you look weak to some of your people? I didn't lose allies. I lost dead weight. The people who stayed understand that there are things more important than reputation." His thumb traced my cheekbone. Like building something that might actually last, like choosing love over power. Thomas's voice drifted from inside. "Uncle Gio, come see. I drew you fighting a dragon." Giovanni laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Duty calls. My nephew needs me to admire my dragon-slaying abilities. You should probably mention you're on the dragon's side in that scenario. He doesn't need to know that yet. Let him have his heroes." I followed him inside, watching as he crouched beside Thomas, giving the boy's artwork the serious attention it deserved. Camila looked up from her laptop, caught my eye, smiled. This was family, I realized. Not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd chosen, the one that chose me back. Later, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Giovanni and I stood on that deck again. Thomas had gone home with Camilla, and the house was quiet except for the distant sound of guards changing shifts. "You never collected your debt," I said suddenly. "What?" "That night at the restaurant after you saved me. You said you'd collect your debt later." I turned to face him. "You never did." His expression shifted into something soft, something I'd only seen in private moments. "Didn't I? I got you, Olivia. All of you. Your brilliant mind, your stubborn independence, your capacity to love someone despite knowing exactly what he is. That's payment beyond anything I could have asked for. I drowned, and you pulled me out. Then I drowned in you, in this life, in everything you represent. You pulled me out of that, too. We saved each other. Is that what we're calling it? Do you have a better term?" I thought about everything that had happened since that stormy night on the beach. The fear, the passion, the impossible choices and their equally impossible consequences. The father I'd lost, the friends I'd nearly destroyed my relationship with, the world I'd stepped into with eyes wide open. "Love," I said finally. "We're calling it love." He kissed me as the last light faded from the sky, his hands tangled in my hair, my arms wrapped around his neck. The kiss tasted like the future, uncertain but ours. Behind us, the house stood solid and warm. Around us, guards maintained their vigilant watch. Above us, stars emerged one by one against the darkening sky. Our world wasn't perfect. Danger still lurked in the shadows, and the peace we'd built was fragile, requiring constant maintenance. My father remained a ghost in my life, present in monthly phone calls but absent in every way that mattered. Giovanni's empire still operated in shades of gray that would never be entirely white. But we had each other against impossible odds. Love built from drowning and resurrection, from choosing partnership over safety, from refusing to let inherited legacies define our future. When we finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, Giovanni rested his forehead against mine. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now we live. We build. We keep choosing each other every single day until it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like breathing." "That simple? That complicated," he corrected. "But worth it. You're worth it." I kissed him again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. In the distance, the city glittered with a million lives being lived, a million stories unfolding simultaneously. Ours was just one among countless others, but it was ours. We'd pulled each other from drowning. Now we'd see how far we could swim together. "On fi hen truak moi gap duak emma, on so hu emoti nua so bat dong sen maem dang thiat kalai du. On gila on zoe so duak thoi, cha twa goi moi thang emotilon, luon veo gay 15, luon non gon. En hung kap not vi song vik duak thong bao voi mot jong du trung lap den muc nu oi tako. The tuong du la mot nuoi la dang bao sao vi tin hin loi tit. Ong kong bao geo hoi ve kuak song qua toi. Kong bao geo thuan and su tun tai qua Giovanni. Kong bao geo goi ten toi. Kuak goi dao tien la ko kan not. Vik kin don o fia bak dang vut qua du kin. Ong noi kong kan emo dao. Gi rang kan and beat moi vik van on thoa. Tot. Kan mung. Suim lang kio dai jua chung toi. Nong any voi tat ca and hung du chung toi kong bao geo noira. Cha chi ko ve thoi. Tam beat. Ong cup mai truak kai toi kip tra loi. Moi kuak goi sao du dien ra theo kung mot kuon mao. Treo doi thong tin kong kem suk. Mot nuoi cha va mot nuoi kungai by rutgon tan and hung doi tak kin don voi mot lich su chung ma kong ai muon zemzet. Twata chap nan judu. Ban kong the epai dunin thay ban kai hoda quiet din ban vio hin. Ban bi twa ti ko lam hoa han. Jessica. Hanava Lauren de rat tuc John kai koi kung tuan goi suong voi ho sao tuan truok tai mot chuan, Safio Cambridge. Ba geo dong ho voi nuok mat. And hung loi byuk toi va and hung loi ka exian tuet vong de toi zemzet lai. On ta noi him, Lauren noi lon Thursday hi muoi. Ka si by tun thuong, hok ti han. To beat on ta la nuoi nu the now. To van chan on I. Ka dien roy. Ko leve, and hung du la lua chan kwatu. Byuk ngo den kai tua gioi thu ho voi Camila vatamas. Du gi duo vik ninthe Giovanni tren son na ze thap bang and hung koi go voi chow tre nam tuoi kwa min. Nin on diodong. Kien and va hon ton tan tom voi du a tre de lam dio su fan kang kwa ho. On I kak kai o ben gia din. Jessica Thuan and Saudu. To van gi ka dien, and hung to ko the hu tai saw ka yuan I. Hanamat nu thoi John Han de chap nan, and hung ko I de goi veo tuan truak de moi Giovanni vavadan and toi voi ko I va chon ko I. Ko tien trien, du con de dat. Lauren van Harigi. Nin Giovanni nu the ko I mong on ta boc lo ban chat k vat tuk su qua min bat siu luke now. And hung ko I de ngung tich siu si van dong de toi roi di. Juma toi koi limo ti chien tang. Heapton hoa ben chin tuk duok ky veo mot bui chiu thang 12 xam zit tai kok sang grand. Noi chung toi lan dao tien doi dao voi cha toi. Lan nai, mot nuoi hoa jai trung lap chu tri. Mot nuoi denong duok ca hai jia din kin trong mak du kong komwa lin he chin tuk now voi ca hai ben. Mot cute song to vien lin bang tro ton trong tai vien tunan. Ong de jiam sat kak tran chap hin su trong hai muoi nam. Boi lu dien ra non gon. Kokon. Chu ky tren kak tai luma se kong bao geo duok ninthe ben trong mot toa on. And hung mang trong luong han bat ky hop dong fap ly now. Cha toa de tam du. And hung kong noi chuyen voi toa. Tam chi kong nin vi fia toa. Bon te qua Giovanni tim thay te toa dui gambon. Mot diem tua vung chuk. Saudu, Kai ca hai ben lon lud rave, Patrick, Kovan qua cha toi, Dung lai ben can toi. Ong I hoi vi con, on noi no ne, Kong bao geo truck teep, and hung ong I hoi, muon beat con ko and ton kong, kohan fuck kong. Qua tu how to tu min noi ra, and hung ong I quan tom. Theo catch qua ong I. Catch qua ong I de fa hui moi ko hoi de chung toi ko mot moi quan he tuk su. Kan beat. Chigi rang kan and beat su tiu si John Kong phi la tat ca. Patrick seat ne vi tua truak kai bo di. Tua Kong beat phi lam gi voi thong tin du. Kong beat lu no ko the doi ju gi Kong. Ko lu la Kong. Giovanni de ju loi hua vi vik hop fap hoa kak don engip qua gia din. Camila lam vi Kong met moi. Su dung kien tuk fap ly qua min de ka truck kak jiao dike ko loi nuan makong 6 famlan tho hin su. Mua lai bat dong san? Kakt song tai nap cow dua kap feb. Dao tu veo kakt song tai koi engip song ne. Kak hot dong bat hop fap de kong bien mat hon ton. Chung tun tai trong and hung vung exam ma tua ko gang kong zem zet qua ky. And hung bao luke de jiam dang ko. Kong kan and hung kuak goi kuya vi kak viu no sung. Kong kan and hung tuan on vi na voi suit song tang han sao tren tung duong net tren ko the. Gan nong ma on de mang trong mu oi sao nam dan duok go bo. Thay the bang mot Thursday gi du gon nu la hai vong. Du la mot bui chu Thursday bay kai moi Thursday ket tin tan mot tsai gi du jong nu ben thuong. Chung tua dang o trong kan na and ton de tro tan don jon la na. Camilan goi oban bep voi cheek mai tin zak te qua min. Zem zet kak hop dong mua bat dong san. Thomas Nam Dai Tren Son Fong Kok Voisach to Mao Va But Dan Dao. Tao Ra and Hung Kan Song Fuma on Se Ko Lai Mot Kach Chi Teet Day Kich Tin. Giovanni Va Tua Dung Tren Bung Sao No. Nin on Sang Koi Thursday Shuyan Kwa and Hung Kan K Tro Trui. Kong Kai Mang Theo Tsailan Kwa Mua Dong Dang Den. Va Tua De Quan Min Trong Mot Trong and Hung Cheek Ao Len Kwa On. Dam Min Trong Lop Vi Ko Mui Hung Kwa On. Dang Gi Ve? On hoi, vong te omeo toi, kio tua veo sat nuoyon. That ky la. Bathang truok, de rat so hai. Bai geo dang zem chow tre on to mao trong kai chi gai on lam vik voi kak jiao dike kindon. Vano gon nu ko kim jiak ben thuong. Gon nu. Van con and hung nuoi bao ve kan gac chu 6. On van mang sung dui ao koek. Chung ta vendang song trong mot the gioima bao luk luan ko the zra du ko lam on so kong? Tua sui gi niam tucv ka hoi du. Doi kai. and hung em sohan v kuok song se nu the now nu kong koan. On zoe toi doi dien voyon, hai te oem le mat toi trong siu chi ma toi lin tuong den, and hung koan kok quan trong. On um kai mo mat tren by bien du. On de gi rang on dang fat dien. On de gi rang ko le koi kung on de giu si, na dui ap luke du han de che nai, and hung la that, du tot dp not tung zara voyon. Nai ca kai no keen on mat di dong min. Keen on trong yu dui truok mot so nuoi quan. On kong mat dong min. On mat di and hung kuthuatai. And hung nuoi o lai hu rang ko and hung du quan trong han dan tieng. Gon tate sai qua on vut v goma toi. Zhong nu zay dung mot Thursday gi du ko the tuk su tun tai. Zhong nu chan tin yu thay v gwin luke. Zhong qua Thomas vong den tu ben trong. Chu gio, lai zem nai. Chow vi chu dan now voi rong. Giovanni koi, tonim ap va chan tan. Neem viu goi. Chow tre on kan on chiam guang ka nong jiat rong qua on. Ko luon nanoi rang on dango fi rong trong kich bandu. Tang bi chua can beat du du. Haida no ko and hung nuoi hung quano. Twadi theo on veotrong. Nin on goi exoam ben kan Thomas. Dan chotok fam ne thuit qua kabi suchu winium tuc ma no sung dang nanduok. Camila engwak len koi mai tinzak te. Back gap on mat toi, mim koi. De la gia din, tuanan ra kong fi gia din ma twata sin ra. Ma la gia din twata chan. Gia din de chan twa tro lai. Sao du, kai mat troi lan va vi len bao troi and hung sak tai qua ho fach va hoa hong. Giovanni va twalai dung tren bong tau du. Thomas de vi na voi Camila. Van goi na yen tin nguai tru tan xam qua and hung nuoi bao vi thay se. On chua bao geo doi no. Twatangadan oi. Saw ko. Dem duo na hong sao kai on qm. On noi on se doi no sao. Twa que mat v fire on. On chua bao geo doi. V mat on trian sang mot tsai gi du mem mai. Mot tsai gi du ma twa chi thay trong and hung koan kok rieng tu. On kong doi saw. On ko duok roy Olivia. Tat cam. Trio si thong min quarem. Sudok lap buong bin quarem. Kanong umot nuoi mak du beat chinzak on tala nuoi nu the now. Du la sutra gia vut xa bat siu ju gi on ko the uka. De chet dui, va on de kio mra. Sao du, on chet dui trong Trong kuok song nai. Trong moi Thursday di dien. Kung kio on ra koi du. Chung ta de q now. Du la and hung gi chung ta goi no saw? Ko thuit ngu now hey Hong Kong? Twagi ve moi Thursday de zara katu dem bao bung tren by bien. Noi so high? Damn me. And hung lua chan bat ka tiva and hung how qua kung bat ka ti qua chung? Nuoi cha twata mat. And hung nuoi be ma twa sut chut nua de fa hui moi quan he. The gioi ma twata buk veo voi doi mat emotu. Tinyu. Koi kung twar noi. Chung ta goi no la tinyu. On han twa kai on sang koi kung tat dan tren bao troi. Bon te on dan veo tok twa. Vong te twa le koan. Nu han ko 6 kwa tuong lai. Kong chik chan. And hung la kwa chung twa. Phia sao chung twa. Ngoi na dung vung chai var me pi. Sung quan chung twa. And hung nuoi bao vi due tri sukan jiak kwa ho. Phia tren chung twa. And hung goi sa lan lut sut hien tren nin troi toi dan. The gioi qua chung ta kong hon hao. Noi him van rin rap trong bong toi. Vasu ben yen ma chung ta de zay dung rat mong man. Doi hoi phi bao tri lin tuc. Cha toi van la mot bong ma trong kuok doi toi. Hien dien trong kak kuok dien thoi hung thang and hung vang mat theo moi kach quan trong. De che qua Giovanni van hot dong trong and hung sak tai xam ma se kong bao geo hon ton trang. And hung chung ta ko now, chong lai and hung ko kan kong the vut qua. Tinu duok zay dung tu su chet dui va hoi sin. Tu vik chan doi tak thay vi ton. Tu vik tu choida and hung disen duok thua kadin nia tuong lai qua chung ta. Kai koi kung chung twa roi now ra. Tho dak vum im koi. Giovanni tua tran len tran twa. Vei. Chien gi zara bai geo? Twa hoi. Bai geo chung ta song. Chung ta zay dung. Chung ta tip tiu si chan now moi gay cho den kai no kong kan kam thay nu moti su lua chan va bat dao kam thay nu hoi tho. Don John vei thoi saw? Phuc tap vei day. On sua lai. And hung sung dang. Am sung dang. Tua han on lan nua. Nain hang han lan nai. Mot loi hua han la mot ka hoi. O dang xa. Ton fo lap lan voi hong tru kuok doi dang song. Hong tru ka chuyen dong doi mora ka chuyen qua chung ta chi la mot trong vio, so ka chuyen kok. And hung no la qua chung ta. Chung ta de kio now koi chet dui. Bai geo chung ta si zem chung ta ko the boi kung now bao xa.